Step on up, sit down, twist off that bottle top or crack open that can, and welcome to Porch Matters. This is Terry Cagle coming to you from my back porch. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am, the name of this show is authentic. On Porch Matters, our saying is this: big issues or just a friendly conversation. No topic is off limits. We take pride in being able to talk about anything with each other in an open discussion. Open discussion is one of the only ways to learn. Your perspective could be changed. You could change the perspective of others. If this is your first time listening to this show, welcome to the porch. If you're a regular listener, you're family, and it's good to have you back. Thank you for listening on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe or follow button and download the episodes in our archives. Please share your favorite episodes with your friends and family on social media or text message. There are a lot of people walking around this world that have never heard of a podcast. Please do what you can to help the show grow, and I promise to do what I can to make the show bigger and better. On this episode, I am joined on the porch with James Phillips. He runs a local newspaper called the Daily Mountain Eagle in Walker County. We talk about his journey in the newspaper business and how he got to where he's at today. He is also the promoter for New Era Wrestling here in Alabama. You can find it on social media and YouTube by typing in New Era Wrestling. If you're a wrestling fan, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow New Era Wrestling on social media and tell them Porch Matters sent you in the comments. We also talk about his journey in it, how he got started, and what they got coming up. Without further ado, let's get started. James Phillips, welcome to the porch, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well, Terry. Thanks for inviting me to come hang out on the porch.
I'm glad the weather's a whole lot better than what it has been, brother, because it's been a little bit cold out here.
It's a good thing we had to skip last weekend.
Right. I was already bundled up, man. I don't wear layers that often. I'm very hot-natured. So anytime you see me pull out a coat, it's cold. Fat boy got cold this week, I'm telling you. Mississippi freezing up actually messed us up at work a little bit.
Well, yeah, and I just went to the grocery store a little bit ago, and Texas and Mississippi being froze up seems to have hurt everybody because there wasn't hardly any groceries at Aldi.
Yeah, 55 was shut down, 20 was shut down. 59's been shut down, so we haul several loads and everything for Nissan down there in Canton. So we're behind. How you been, man? How's life been treating you? It's been a long time since me and you've actually sat down and had a conversation.
We hadn't talked to each other in a while. I've been back in Jasper for about 5 years. We had lived in Mississippi for a little while, and moving back here, took over the Eagle back in 2016. And, just busy with work, having a full-time job running a newspaper, and then 5 kids. There's not a whole lot of time for extra stuff,
No, not really. How did you get into the newspaper business after all?
My whole life, like from the time I was in about the 5th grade, I wanted to be a lawyer. And
I could see that about you.
I like to argue,
Same here.
And so I was in the gifted program in the county schools, and I did a mentorship with an attorney in Jasper. I guess it was my junior and senior years of high school. And I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer after going through that. It was just too much, too much school, too much. I like the courtroom stuff, but all the stuff before that, kind of boring, And so I ended up taking a scholarship. I had offers at Tulane and Birmingham Southern. I had kind of partial scholarships. And then I had a full ride at Bevel. And I'd fallen in love with Andrea. You know her, and she's been my wife now for almost 22 years.
Shout out to you, Andrea, by the way, if you're listening.
And so I decided to stick around. I went to Bevel for 2 years. My first day at Bevel, a guy asked me, he said, his name's Brian Kennedy. He said, what do you think you want to do? And I said, well, I don't know. I was going to be a lawyer my whole life. And he said, well, what do you like? And I said, well, I love sports and I love to write. And so he said, I got a buddy that works at the Mountain Eagle. You need to go talk to him. I walked in and I started covering football games, and the rest is history. I've been there. I've worked there 3 times now over 25 years. And the last time I left, when we went to Mississippi, I said, I'm not coming back unless I can take the place over. So that's what I did when I came back.
I know you was very instrumental in my high school career.
Yeah, that's some of my early days. You were a beast at Summerton Christian.
Well,
And
thank you.
that was some fun teams to watch with Josh Russell throwing the ball around. That was a good time.
It was, and I don't think I ever really gave you the thank you that you deserved for helping me out as much as you did. I always tried to give you as many hugs as I could.
That's right. That's right. Well, and people probably don't know, we go back a long, long ways with Andrea. Her brother played football and grew up with you and your cousin. And so
and y'all went to school with my older cousin, Wendy.
Right.
Who is probably listening to this. So if you got any real good stories that you can share that'll embarrass her or get both of us hit, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't want to get hit. I'm gonna, and probably half those stories would incriminate Andrea too, and she'd hit me. So.
More than likely.
I don't want to say too much on that end.
Didn't you start out right on the sports page? Isn't that what you started out?
Yeah, I was a sports writer for about 5 or 6 years before I just I bounced around at different things, different papers. And I really liked the sports aspect of it because I've always played ball growing up. And I sit around now, if there's a ball game on, I'm watching it. And it was really cool. I got to do some neat things as far as like cover Alabama and Auburn football, cover the Braves. I got to meet Cal Ripken at a Braves game one time. That's one of the coolest things
How was that?
And then, he was awesome. I asked him about his record, and that sort of thing. And all he told me, he said, man, I just go to work. And that's all, and that's something I think everybody could look at that's a hardworking person. We just go to work every day and we get it done. And that's the way he looked at it. He was such a common man type personality to be bigger than life, I've hardly ever met a jerk in any of the sports stuff that I've covered. Now, politics might be a little different, but but sports, everybody's usually pretty nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of jerks in politics.
Right.
I'm glad to hear that he was, cool and calm and everything. Cause
he was really cool.
I've got a small experience with a pro. I grew up. I used to pitch back before I got muscle bound and real huge.
Right.
And my hero was Nolan Ryan, and my mother worked at a job where she had to travel over toward Dallas area and everything. And she met a guy who knew Nolan Ryan and asked him to get an autograph. She come in with it. I've still got it in here, and it had my name on it. And I was just, to use a wrestling term, I marked out a little bit because my hero signed me an autograph, But then I found out that he was just, can't put it any other way. He was just a dick. So it kind of ruined it for me.
Now I will tell you, the only one that really was that way to me was Greg Maddox.
Really?
He didn't like to talk. Yeah, he didn't like to talk to the press. He was just he wanted to be left alone. And he was kind of like that, just real standoffish,
I guess I could understand that a little bit, but at the same time, it's kind of part of your job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, you're not
It'd
only
be like if I can't walk around Jasper and be a jerk to everybody as the publisher of the paper,
Not at all.
That's how I look at it with athletes and stuff. That's a part of it. You got fans, and if those people weren't coming to your games and watching your games on TV, you don't have a job.
No, not at all. Getting back to the newspaper part, what goes into writing an article? Does it just depend on what you're covering, or is it all still basically the same steps?
Well, like everybody has a different style of writing, and everybody goes into it different ways, I guess. I'm still an old sports writer at heart. Like I got a new guy that I'd hired last year, and he'd never covered like a city council meeting before, but he's always covered football games. And I told him the other day, we were talking about it, and I said, listen, go into a city council meeting like it's a football game. I said, you just watch it. You pick out the highlight, whatever's the biggest play of the day. You write on that. You put a couple quotes on that, and then everything else, you just hit the highlights,
Right.
And to me, I like people stories. I like to write about the people of our community and stuff. And I'm not the type of person that like writes out questions and stuff. I don't really, unless it's something huge, I don't prepare going into it. And I like to just have a conversation with people. And usually that's when they'll open up, like if you're just sitting there and talking and shooting the bull with them and you tell them parts of your life, it just kind of gets people opened up and they're willing to talk to you. And that's where you get those really good stories at.
Right. What's the difference between whenever you're writing an article or say an editorial?
Well, I can get a little heat on my editorials sometimes because, it's not always, I don't ever write anything hoping to tick somebody off for sure. I don't think that's the right way to go into it. But also, I don't write something just to please people's ears either when it's an editorial or a column. I think it's got to be it's your own personal opinion and beliefs. And I feel like as long as you're real with that, and you're not trying to just tick people off, that people can respond to that without getting too upset. I try to stay away, especially the older I get, I really try to stay away from political stuff just because nobody's going to change anybody's mind. I got my beliefs and they got their beliefs. So I try to tell a lot of stories about like my family and kids and things like that. And then for something more editorial, like real editorial, I try to hit on local things. Like I just did one last week on parishes is trying to get a bigger dog ordinance, more bite in their dog ordinance and things like that. That, I mean, nobody can complain about that,
Right. We on this show, we've covered 2 or 3 political hot topics because it was the elephant in the room and you couldn't avoid it.
Right. And there's times you have to do that,
Yeah. But, even still, if I look at our numbers and everything, those are some of the lowest rated ones because nobody wants to hear any of that, especially with the way COVID is right now. And the way the last political cycle was drained in, it's changed over into this one. Everything is political because nobody can do anything else. And
right. Well, and the thing, and I don't mind talking politics if we've lost this ability. I think across the whole country to be able to disagree with each other and still have a conversation. Like
you're preaching to the choir here, brother.
Yeah, our disagreement shouldn't tear us apart. It ought to be something that brings us closer together because we should just kind of understand one another. But, that's not – if right now, if you're not exactly like me, man, I got to hate you. It's like Alabama and Auburn football almost. And I don't think that's the way the founding fathers meant it.
No. I mean, it's just like I listen to Michael Savage a lot. And he said this phrase, and I've said it on the show before. It's very simple, but it's very deep as well. A bird can't fly straight without a left wing and a right wing.
Right, exactly.
It's okay for me to have my thoughts. It's okay for you to have your thoughts. That's how discussions come about. You share yours.
Right.
I share mine. You might be able to change my perspective. I might be able to change your perspective. But there's not in those instances, there's not a right, there's not a wrong. It's opinion is all it is.
Right. I agree 100%.
So I mean, it seems like the art of discussion, like you were saying, it's almost a lost art now. And I don't understand why people would get hot about your editorials.
Right. Well, and then you look at what they see on television from whether it's the 24-hour news cycle and everybody's always yelling at each other, or even if you just look at, like you talked about, being able to debate with each other. Look at the debates we had to watch this time. That wasn't a debate. That was just people arguing, It was embarrassing for the entire country,
It was. I wasn't happy to watch it. I didn't even watch it because I knew what kind of
Right.
I knew what I was getting into. So I just,
I'll watch wrestling for that,
right. Well, you said earlier, I remember whenever you left and went to Mississippi. Tell me about that experience, because you picked up everything and moved to Mississippi. What was the difference in living in Alabama versus Mississippi? What was the culture
Well,
like over there? What was the job basically?
it was pretty similar. I'll tell you the reason that I left. I had applied for the publisher's job at the Eagle when a longtime publisher, Mr. Wassman, retired. Went through the interview process, came down to me and one other guy. They hired a guy from Kentucky to come in, and I worked for him for about a year. But my dream job has been to run the Mountain Eagle since the time I got started. That's all I've wanted to do.
Right.
And so I looked at it as I've got to get away from here because I've always kind of been here, and I needed to go make a mark somewhere else where nobody knew me, because here it's always, well, James, he's from here. We know him. And so I wanted to show that I could go somewhere else. And I absolutely went to the middle of nowhere in Mississippi. It's called Kosciuszko. Nobody's ever heard of it. Oprah Winfrey's from there. That's the only thing anybody knows. She was born there. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
We didn't know a soul. And so moved over there, and that paper had not made a profit in about 10 years.
Really?
The community didn't like it anymore. I mean, if there was a bad situation you could walk into, this was a bad one. And I told Andrea, I said, if I can come here and I can turn this paper around, I can turn a paper around anywhere in this country. And so that's what we did. We went in. We knew the plan was to go in, be active in the community, show people that we cared about the place, show them that we're covering things because they weren't doing that before. And it took me about 8 months to make a profit. And from there, we just soared. We won all kinds of awards every year. We were named the best paper in Mississippi. And so I thought I'd be there probably a good at least 5 years. It ended up being a little over 3. And the Mountain Eagle had a change and called me, wanted to know if I was interested to come back and take it over. And so it's kind of like Bear Bryant when he talked about mama calling. That's the way I looked at it. That was mama calling. I had to come on home for a bunch of different reasons, but it was the right move to leave, and it was the right move to come back. So I've been blessed there to just kind of get lucky, I think, sometimes.
What changed whenever you came back, other than your job title versus the way it was whenever you left?
It's pretty much the same. That the publisher was here before. He wasn't from our community, so it had lost some of its just real community ties, and I feel like we kind of lost our way a little bit. And so that's when I came in the door, I preached, we're going to be local, local, local. If it's a big turnip picture, we're going to put a big turnip picture in the paper. Just anything that anybody would want to see from here, because that's what we can offer people. Nobody else can do that. Like, if they want to see politics, they can see that on their phone immediately. If they want to see sports, like, national sports stories and things like that, they can look at that on their phone as it's going on. But nobody else can give them Walker County news and Walker County sports except for us. And so that was what we needed to focus on, and we have. And we've made a lot of different changes. We've gone more digital for things. We do a lot of video. Our sports season, like during football season, it's wild now. We do like a full-blown game day show, and then do a wrap-up show the night after the games, just like Sideline on Fox 6, So we've marketed that to call it Prep Zone, DME Prep Zone. And so everything we do with high school sports is branded. And I just think that's the way to do things. We've cut back our print days. Now we're only 3 days a week. But that was all done because we really have two audiences. We have the older generation that all they'll ever do is pick up a paper. And then we have a younger generation that's my age and younger that they'll never pick up a paper. They're going to look at all that information on their phone or their computer. And so we've got to be able to spread ourselves to be able to reach both of those. And so that's kind of what 3-day week has done.
You got to be able to evolve, because it seems like the digital age is making the print obsolete.
Right,
like
right.
And nobody our age is picking up a newspaper anymore.
No, they're not, unless it's, scrapbooking or something.
That's it.
And the key with getting the print out there is that all the print needs to be completely local. And then on our online stuff, we'll throw AP stories on there and things like that, because we don't have any, there's no limits to what you can put online.
Right. Anything that draws traffic.
That's right. And, people, we have some of the most awful comments on Facebook on our stories and stuff that we'll put on there. Never about local, but anything national, especially during the political season. I mean, they will just call each other whatever name they want to. And they'll fuss at us and say that we're putting it out there, but they're reading it,
I've seen a few of those comment threads. It almost looks like Jerry Springer.
It does, but it's like I hired a digital guy about a year ago just to strictly do digital stuff and social media. And I told him, I said, I don't care what they say. It's those people are going to get that information somewhere. So we might as well have it on our website and them go into some national site to get it, and put it on our Facebook page. And the more they argue and complain about it, that's driving more people to our page,
Yeah, it is. You mentioned earlier how you was doing prep shows and post shows and everything for local stuff. Is all of that on your website as well?
It's all either on our website or, like we've moved in just like everybody else. We have a Daily Mountain Eagle YouTube page. And so we put all of our YouTube videos on there. And we do like some talking politics type things when guys are coming in through town. We try to talk to all of them. We also we do once a year. This is my little baby project. We've done the last 2 years a Christmas special. And when I first told my people we were going to do a Christmas special, they had no idea what I was talking about. But it's like Sonny and Cher, or Saturday Night Live Christmas special. We do skits and we have musical performances, and we've done that 2 years in a row, and people just loved it. Our views have been through the roof.
You're not dressing up like Cher singing "I Got You, Babe," are you?
No, but I did dress up like I dressed up like Buddy the Elf, and I got arrested twice, and I was Buddy the Elf. So
seriously,
yeah. I'll send you the link so you can see Nick Smith and TJ Armstrong have arrested me 2 years in a row.
That's awesome. What is the most interesting story that you ever wrote?
Oh, man. There's been a lot of them. I'll tell you the one that sticks with me more than any of them, and it was early on in my career. Well, I'll tell you two different ones. The first one was early in my career as a sports writer. And you know the guy well, Adam Wells, and he was fighting for his life with a heart transplant and things like that. And all the football players at Dora had really rallied around him. And I went to his hospital room after he had a heart transplant, took pictures of him. Stephen, Andrea's brother, was there. They were, best buddies. And that story, I think it was just because it was so personal. I knew the kid, and he was such a good person. I think I just did a really good job on that story, and it ended up being named the story of the year by the Associated Press in Alabama that year. And so that sticks with me.
Other than a few elderly people that I know, I can't think of anybody that I have come across that had a bigger heart than Adam.
Yeah.
Whenever he was going through all that stuff, I had already transferred to something Christian, but he was a real good friend to me. And then in the 2 years that I knew him, we played ball.
And he was just a good, and he came from a good family. His mother and brother, both sweet people.
God, yes.
So that's the story that's 20 something years ago, and it still sticks.
I still think about him every once in a while. I've got one picture of us together, and it was me and him and Steven, and I'm trying to remember who else it was, but I'll
There's
look at
probably
it.
some goofy
It was.
person like Mikey Hill or somebody.
I thought it probably was. I think it was, to be honest with you. But
And then the other story that really sticks out to me is when I was in Mississippi. There was this family that had feuded two different families. They were like the Hatfields and the McCoys of that area of Mississippi.
really,
And back in the 1800s, what started the feud was one of them's great grandpa shot the other one's great grandpa on the courthouse steps, killed him dead right there on the courthouse.
What was the reason?
Now I wish you hadn't asked me that, because now I don't even know what the reason was. It was some nefarious thing for sure. I know both of them were kind of outlaws.
Uh-huh.
And so from that point on, these two families hated each other. And there was one member of one of the families that still lived in Kosciuszko. It really would have been like his 5 times great grandfather. And then there was another guy that used to be from there, but he lived in Virginia now. And he was coming to town for a like a back in time thing where everybody was talking about the old days and stuff. And I mentioned to I had an 80-year-old reporter, which is weird, but she was awesome. And I mentioned to her, I said, what do you think if I got those two guys together in a room and let's do a little story about that feud? And she said, no, James, you don't need to do that. They'll fight each other, even though they're old. And I said, come on. Her name was Miss Nancy. And I said, come on, Miss Nancy. These two guys, and I'm telling you, they're old. This was 5 or 6 years ago. They were 75, 80 then. And so I don't take her advice. It's the only time I didn't take her advice there. I called the two men. And I said, hey, why don't we get together for coffee or something? There was a little restaurant next door to my office there. And both of them agreed to do it. And we sat in there and talked. And they buried the hatchet. The two of them cried and hugged each other. And we got a picture of them on the courthouse square where the shooting had happened, and ended a 100-year-old family feud right there with a story in the newspaper. And I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever been a part of.
That's awesome.
And both men, they just thanked me, so much that they were able to get that off their chest and move on from it. And they became really good friends and talked to each other almost every day.
Was that the only killing that happened inside the family, or did they do like the Hatfields and McCoys and try to kill off one another?
I believe that was the only killing, but there'd been many, many threats of death after that. And they wouldn't ever marry each other. That's for sure.
God, it's amazing how long people can hold a grudge.
Right.
Well, speaking of cool things, I hear somebody is in the wrestling business.
Yeah. Now you've known me forever. Like
I have. We've even went to wrestling together, if my memory serves me correctly.
I think we have. And the one thing that people have always known me for is that I would say I'm the biggest wrestling fan just about anybody knows, And the only thing that I would want to do other than be the publisher of the Daily Mountain Eagle is to have Vince McMahon's job, And so about 3 years ago now, I had a friend call me and he said, hey, I know you've always wanted to get in the wrestling business. Would you consider doing something like that locally? And I said, well, yeah, I'm sure I would. And he said, well, this company's available and I think you'd be perfect to do it. And so I couldn't turn that down. I was like, I got to give it a shot and see what I could have done if I was really working for WWE or something,
Right.
And so I started out. We started out in Parrish at Parrish High School. We renamed the company New Era Wrestling, and ever since then we've gone strong for 3 years now. We've survived COVID somehow. Our biggest crowd ever was probably last March, right as COVID was hitting. We had our anniversary show at Bevel State's Gym, and we had Scott Steiner there.
You had Big Papa Pump?
Big Papa Pump was there. You remember he had a heart attack last year.
I do.
This was 2 weeks after his heart attack. We were his first show that he did after that.
Really?
He couldn't wrestle because of it, but he walked out to the ring with a tag team and he hit a couple people with a chair. So, but we had about 500 people in the Bevel State Gym for that show.
That's a good crowd. That's a good crowd for that building.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then we've done most of our shows have been at Swan Gym. Right now we can't rent it because of COVID. But we had about 400 people a couple times when we had Rhino and Tommy Dreamer at shows.
Nice.
And those were really good. And then, but the thing that I've loved is that now people come, they don't care if we've got a big name like that's been on WWE. They come to see our guys, and we bring in, I would say the wrestlers that we bring in are right at that level of getting signed. And so they need a good show, and they need to be wrestling good opponents to try to get signed by somebody. And so we bring people in from every show, people from Georgia, Florida, like as far away as Miami and Florida. We bring people from Tennessee, from Kentucky. We've flown people in from California a couple times. So it's a major deal. We're not just doing wrestling like we used to see show up at Door High School, you know. This is big time. And I've just loved it. Like I was afraid the first couple shows I was real quiet because I thought, you know, all these guys, they don't want to hear from some newspaper guy about how to put on a wrestling show. You just
said something that just baffled me. You were quiet?
Yeah, I was quiet. Can you believe it?
Come on, James.
And so I was kind of just like watching and sitting there thinking, I'm in the middle of a wrestling business here, you know? And but the guys, I think they saw the passion I had for it, and that I really did know what I was talking about when it came to here's how you get a crowd to really respond to you, you know, and things like that. And so they've all welcomed me in. I'm just like I call myself the ringmaster when I've wrestled a couple times because I feel like I'm the ringmaster of the circus.
Wait a minute. You've been in the ring too?
I've been in the ring twice now.
Talk to me about that first bump.
First bump, I actually trained for about 4 or 5 months before I got in the ring.
Who trained you?
My buddy Bubba Cagle.
Okay.
He's the mayor at Paris now.
Okay.
And
he's got one heck of a last name.
Yeah, he does. I knew he'd like that. Well, he did most of the training. And the first match I had, well, I'll tell you about the bump. You know, you've seen training on television where you stand there and you just fall backwards.
Right.
Well,
flat back.
My body and my mind were not meant to do that. You know, like you don't just stand there and throw yourself backwards.
Right.
And so it took me, it was the ugliest bumps you'd ever seen. And finally they said, okay, they got another guy to stand behind me, and they schoolboyed me and pushed me over the guy. And then I fell, and I fell fine after that. But that first bump, and the weirdest bump is if you get body slammed, because there's nothing like standing straight up and then feeling your whole body go upside down and then getting slammed on a hard mat, you know.
I don't know how I would take to that, because number one, I'm not used to leaving my feet. Number two, I'm not used to somebody being strong enough to actually handle my weight.
Yeah, me either. I'm not a little guy, you know.
No, you're not.
Even though I've lost weight, but I'm still not a little guy. You know,
I've noticed that.
Hey, I'm 6'1", slim trim, 235 pounds now.
I heard you. All right.
Twisted Steel and sex appeal.
There you go, baby. I got down below 400 pounds for the first time in 15 years last year, and then I fell off the wagon. I've got to get back on my diet.
You're a little bit taller than I am.
6'7". Yeah.
Now I will say the first match that I had, it was really cool. I got to plug my phone in. I just got a notification. I'm about to die here.
Well, don't do that.
I won't. I'll be good. But the first match I had was a 6-man tag team match, and one of my partners was Action Mike Jackson,
a legend around here.
Absolute legend around here. He was the coolest guy. He didn't treat me like I didn't know what I was doing or anything. You know, he acted like I was a professional, and I appreciated that. You know, he's 70 years old now, and he still wrestles.
Mm-hmm.
And And so I was teamed with him and a buddy of mine from California named Dave Dutra. He's been on AEW a couple times on their Dark show.
Mm-hmm.
And so we teamed against the local team of the Brawlers, who kind of looked like the Brooklyn Brawler, and another guy out of Georgia named Shane Knowles. And they had really been a thorn in the side of Mike Jackson and me for a few months. And we came out on the winning end. My finishing move's a stunner, and I hit the stunner on them and got the pinfall.
Is it the Orville stunner?
Oh, yeah, it's the Orville stunner. And it's a pretty stunner, too, I'm telling you.
1, 2, 3, right in the middle?
Right in the middle.
Gum right.
And then got up, and I acted like I'd won a freaking world championship,
Well, you did, brother.
But, I mean, that's a bucket. Who can say they wrestled a match, That's awesome. And then my second one was last year at that show with Scott Steiner, and we actually started a riot and didn't get to finish our match because a fan jumped the rail and punched a manager. And the match had to end there. So I'm still looking to get some payback on that. I was going to do I had planned on a flying cross body and didn't get to show that off. So I'm trying to get back in the ring again sometime soon.
And I didn't think white heat was possible anymore.
Yeah.
You had a guy jump the guardrail to come after one of your managers.
Well, wasn't a guy. It was a girl.
Oh, really?
Jumped the guardrail and punched another female. She was a female manager. Punched her right dead in the nose. And then the manager, her husband, was actually in the match against me. He left me and jumped on the outside of the ring and punched the other woman to get her off of his wife. So cops were called. It went viral. The video of it, I think there was 500,000 views on it. It was a neat little thing that should have never happened because it was a dumb fan,
True, but you might need to book that fan and have a grudge match.
Well, the fan wouldn't have lasted 5 seconds with somebody. And they got out of there, or they would have ended up arrested. It was a woman and her dad and boyfriend, and they got out of there quick because our locker room started to empty. And it doesn't matter heel or face, bad guy, good guy. If you start messing with somebody that's in the family, that whole locker room is going to come out and take care of you. So they were lucky they got out of there.
Yeah, they used to back in the day. Your baby faces, and for those of you that aren't wrestling fans and don't know what we're talking about, James, would you, if you would, to explain what a baby face and what a heel is?
Right, a baby face is your good guy. That's Hulk Hogan when he was wearing red and yellow, all that
brother.
kind of stuff. Yeah, that's right, brother. And then I did interview him one time too. That's my favorite interview I've ever done is Hulk Hogan.
How was he?
He was awesome. He was Terry for the most of the interview, and he was promoting. They did a show on CMT, like it was a celebrity wrestling show, and he was promoting that. And at the very end, he said, "Well, brother, you got anything else?" And I said, "I tell you what, I'd really like for you to Hulk up for me one time." And he said, "You want me to Hulk up, brother?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to hear why everybody in Jasper should be watching, celebrity wrestling with Hulk Hogan." And he just turned it on like nothing and turned it on. He was the Hulkster, and he was, "Let me tell you this, what you going to do," and all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool. And then, okay, so babyface is a good guy. Heel is a bad guy. And, everybody knows the heels of the old days, like the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov and Rowdy Piper, all these foreigners that we couldn't stand back then. That was what we always talked about. That was good days back then.
No, yes. I miss Piper. I
do tell you, he was such, he was just good.
Yeah. I mean, he was voted the best heel ever.
Right. He knew how to incite a riot too. Back in the day,
yes.
It was easy for people to get stabbed back in the day and things like that. Because it wasn't entertainment back then. It was legit, and people It's fun to watch when the crowd gets into it. Our crowds in Walker County are similar to those old school crowds. They get into it 100%, and I warn our heels, don't go out in the crowd, because I mean you never know when somebody's got an iPhone or something,
especially in Walker County.
Yeah, right. And what's so funny is the crowd cares about you, and I'm a good guy for sure. And like I've gotten beat up a couple times. One time I had to go to the hospital with my arm. They'd put my arm on the ring post and hit it with a chair. And so I thought I'd broken my arm. And the next morning I had probably 10 or 15 messages from fans checking on me, see if I was okay, if I got out of the hospital, all that kind of stuff. And that means a lot, you know. And so they really, they get into those good guys and bad guys.
Explain your process. Do you write the stories? Do you do the storylines? Are you booking the talent yourself? Explain that process.
It's pretty much I do most of the storyline stuff without going into too much detail. Some of it's, you know, you don't want to say that it's fake or real or that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of real life and blurred lines when it comes to wrestling storylines. Most of what people see at our shows, if there's people that don't like each other, they probably really don't like each other backstage either. And that kind of boils over, and it makes for entertainment without killing each other, you know.
Real stories always make the best stories.
Right. And then booking talent, I have a partner and we do that together. We look and try to find talent all over the country, and have done a good job of bringing in people. We've had, I want to say we've had at least 10 or 12 that have ended up either wrestling on NXT or on AEW. And so that's been pretty neat to see.
That's awesome. Well, brother, how can the folks find your show?
They just need to look up on Facebook, New Era Wrestling Alabama would be the best way to do it. And then, you know, while they're liking things, they need to go to Daily Mountain Eagle on Facebook too and like that page, and they comment and say all kind of crazy stuff like the rest of them do.
Absolutely. Are you finding happiness and joy and everything in what you're doing these days? Oh
yeah. Like, you know, everybody, the coronavirus has, you know, tried to take us all out, and to be able to do things, I'm not out digging ditches, you know. I get to put out a newspaper every day, and it's the one thing I've always wanted to do. And then for fun on the side, I get to run a wrestling show. So I don't need to complain about anything. And then you add to that, you know, I'm a nerdy guy that got to fall in love with the girl of his dreams in high school and somehow been able to hold on to her again, or, you know, for this long. And then I have 5 kids that are just incredible. I can't complain. There's a whole lot worse things out there going on with people than anything going on in my life. I say this jokingly sometimes. You know, people say, "How you doing?" I say, "Oh, I'm just living the dream." But you are living the dream, brother, and I'm happy for you, and I'm proud for you. I am living the dream, and you bring that up. I got my first tattoo last year. Oh, really? I don't know if you remember my uncle Rick Watson. I do. He passed away last year in July, and he was one of the biggest influences on my life. He was like a second dad to me. Yeah. And it was a shocking thing when he passed away. And the day after he died, I called my buddy Jeremy at Brothers Keepers Tattoo in Jasper, and went over there. Rick would always say, anytime you ask him how you doing, he would respond with "living the dream." And so my first tattoo, it's a script, and it says "living the dream," and there's a blue butterfly next to it because Rick had a butterfly tattoo on his shoulder. He had gotten it back in when he was in. He didn't go to Vietnam, but he was in Panama during Vietnam. Him and a bunch of Army buddies all got drunk one night. And they all decided they was going to get tattoos. And the next morning, they woke up. Rick was the only one that ended up with a tattoo, and he had a blue butterfly on his shoulder. So I know all about living the dream. And I've really, since he passed away last year, I've tried to make that my mantra. every day, and I don't do it. I don't get to do it every day. Sometimes I let life beat me down a little bit, but if we can all just remember we're living the dream, that's that's a big thing.
Absolutely. I told my buddy Jason Akins, who is a co-host on this show.
Oh, I know Jason.
Yeah, I know you do. we were talking about an episode on joy and happiness, and something that I had heard a while back, and it's still relevant. The stuff that we're doing right now, the stuff that we're complaining about, this, that, and the other, is the same stuff that we prayed about before.
Right.
So, that was one of the reasons why I see what you're doing. You seem happy. You seem full of joy and everything, and that's really good to see.
Yeah. Well, I think I put a lot of hard work in over the years, and I still want to work hard at whatever I do, whether it's newspaper or husband, dad, wrestling. I want to be the best at it. And so I try to put everything I got into it. And I hope that shows when people hear me talk about the newspaper. I hope they hear that passion and they see that passion. And then the same thing with wrestling. And I know they do with the family stuff, because I write stories all the time about them. And that's usually the stories that people comment on the most is, they like to hear about the kids and goofy stories with me and Andrea. Sometimes I get in trouble with her. I wrote a story one time about her falling asleep during church during the prayer time. And I thought that was going to be the end of us, but she's held on to me.
I've done that before. I'll admit it. I fell asleep during church as an adult a time or two. Yeah. But it is what it is. James, I appreciate you coming on the show. If you would, one more time, tell the folks where they can find the Daily Mountain Eagle. They can find your editorials, and they can also find you Era Wrestling.
That's right. You can find us at mountaineagle.com or pick up a paper anywhere across Walker County. And then Daily Mountain Eagle Facebook page, and also New Era Wrestling Alabama. That's our wrestling Facebook page. And I will say that I can't announce it tonight, but I have just signed somebody tonight before we got on the phone. I've signed a big former world heavyweight champion that has competed in WWE, WCW, and ECW that will be at our show on March 13th. And that is going to be a big announcement that we'll have coming up. I think you said this will come out on Friday.
Yes, sir.
They'll probably see that announcement on our Facebook page on Friday or Saturday.
Okay. Well, we've also got some listeners that's not from Alabama. Right. Is there anywhere that they can find the show, like on Twitch or YouTube?
Yeah, we have a YouTube. Look up New Era Wrestling on YouTube, and we do full shows. We had our last show was last Saturday on the 13th, and that show should be uploaded either tonight or tomorrow. So by the time they listen to this, it'll be on YouTube. They can watch it.
Well, James, I appreciate you coming on the show. You're welcome anytime on the porch, and we'll catch you later, brother.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for letting me hang out on the porch for a little while.
That's all the time we have for this episode. Please like the page and join the group on Facebook at Porch Matters Podcast. Please subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, or the platform of your choice so you don't miss an episode. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, please rate the show and leave us a review if you have the time. Thank you very much for listening, and catch us next time right here on Porch Matters.